start. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to 51 Labs' February webinar. My name is Patricia Lateef. I'm the co-founder and director of operations of 51 Labs, and we're really happy to have you. And we're really excited that we have a really great guest this month to talk about search engine optimization. We have Ralph Desmornes here joining us from the US. Ralph, thanks for waking up early to be with us. We really appreciate it. I'll hand off to you in a moment just to introduce yourselves. But for those of you who are joining us, Ralph will give a presentation for a bit. He has taken some of your questions. I know some of you put some questions into the survey, so it seems that there's a range of types of expertise and questions for him. So hopefully he can address some of those, and I'm sure he'll be happy to take your questions either during or after the presentation. So Ralph, I'll hand to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patricia. And yeah, so again, my name is Ralph Desmornes. I've been doing SEO for like over 5 years, really. So I'll get into a little bit and kind of share a little bit more about my presentation, about SEO altogether in the presentation. And then, yeah, from there, we could just go into questions, and I do have that list there. So I know there's a couple of questions that may need some in-depth answers, and others that we kind of cover some of the basics with. So, but just to, I guess, get an idea of anyone that is here, I guess, is there anyone who could tell me a little bit about SEO and what they know so far? I want to make this a little interactive.
Yeah, there's a hand up. I think Kutaiba, please feel free. I see your hand is raised. Or he's frozen. And I see Hamid too. So Hamid, you're not frozen. Go ahead.
Hi everybody, how are you? About SEO, as what I know, it's if you have products or services online, when someone searching Google or any search engine, it show your products or services at the search list. That's what I know from my side.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and that's great. So I'm going to get into that, of course. And I like that you mentioned that, it's not limited to kind of like the main search engines. It's really anything that you can type in a search for. Each one of them has their own algorithms or their own set of rules and guidelines that they go through in order to pick what's the most relevant. So yeah, we'll get into a little bit of that. I will say most of the presentation that I do have prepared is mostly for Google. I do have some experience for optimizing LinkedIn pages as well. But for the most part, presentations is going to be primarily Google. But if you have any questions outside of that, I could definitely take those and answer them to the best of my abilities. Alrighty. So I will share. Give me one sec. Interesting. There we go. All right, so just a little bit about myself from here. Can everyone see my screen? Perfect. Alrighty, so yeah, I'm an SEO analyst and marketing strategist. I work with both Pearson and have clients as well through my agency, Eclipse Digital Media. And I have over 5 years of experience working with SEO, working with brands anywhere from eCommerce, which is the Blunt Power, Fit Tees, and the Rhino brands. I worked with different franchises that focused more on local SEO, like Brick Kicker. They are an inspection services franchise that has multiple locations throughout the United States. And I've also worked within the higher education space, working with several different universities, including Villanova University, which is a pretty popular one in the States, Ohio University as well, and Rhino University. a writer university as well. So my experience kind of goes a little broad. I've been able to touch a lot of different industries when it comes to the SEO world. But as far as what to expect, some of the things that I'm going to go over, again, we kind of talked about what SEO is, and you hit it right on the head. We're going to talk about organic versus paid, a little bit about how search engines work, and then really hone into the SEO factors that actually affect how well we rank, and some quick actionable items that we can take away to, start optimizing websites right away. Again, so what is SEO? Again, really, practice of increasing the quality and website traffic through what's called organic search. And organic search is the non-paid version of any type of traffic that you're getting to your website. Again, search engine optimization deals with, again, the organic, right? You have your organic, you have your paid. Paid is anything that has ads or sponsored next to it. And then you have your organics, which is essentially everything else that you don't pay for to show up, right? If you do an ad or whatnot, you're able to go into Google's ad manager and essentially pay for that placement, which is prime real estate, but the rest of the page is dominated by natural results. And essentially, what ends up happening with search engines is there's a couple things when it comes to how it actually works, right? So essentially, these search engines, at least for Google, from this aspect, crawl sites using what they call bots. And these bots end up storing all the information that a particular website has on it, from the words, the imagery, the site structure, to understand as much as they can about the website, and really stores it in their database. And from there, as soon as you type in a particular search query, Google, within, like for this one, for car seats, within 0.78 seconds, aggregated 465 million different sites and listed them into the order that they felt was from most relevant to least relevant, right? So again, so they're constantly scouring the web, constantly adding to their database, adding to their index in order to serve up the best results. And the thing that we have to understand is, how does Google or these other search engines typically choose what is the most relevant versus what's not? And again, it does vary by different search engines. Of course, you have your Bing, your Yahoo, DuckDuckGo and whatnot as well, but I think all of them do apply a lot of the same principles, with Google being one of the leading leaders in the space. Any questions there so far about any of the, I guess, how does it work? What is SEO? I know a lot of you guys do know, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you have any questions, I want to make sure I address it. Alrighty, perfect. So we will move on to the next part. So what impacts SEO and helps these search engines choose what is the most relevant versus what's not are the SEO factors, right? There are, it could be thousands of different factors that are grouped up in several categories that play a part into how well a particular website ranks on the in the search engines. And there are factors that can help and help you improve your rankings, and also factors that can hold you back. So we always try to get familiar with the search engine guidelines so that we understand, hey, these are the parameters that these search engines expect us to play in. And we typically don't want to go outside of that. So I would say some of the bad factors, again, that's really more specifically towards some of what Google expects people to do is they just want you to really just keep users in mind, right? They want you to create a website experience that is user friendly, that performs well, that helps the user get what they need when they type in some a particular information, and get it done in the most effective and efficient manner. But what they don't want is people to try to game the system, do things like create automatically generated content or create link farms in order to game the system. They'd rather websites kind of naturally expand their reach throughout the web, and also create natural content that they really feel is of quality and something that their users will actually get some type of value out of, right? So if you are always keeping value-based items in mind, generally you're in the right track in terms of what a good factor is versus a bad factor. If you ever find yourself kind of just doing things just to please the search engines and not really keeping your users in mind, sometimes those are the areas where you want to think twice about running that particular initiative when it comes to trying to get some SEO love. But any questions on any of the SEO or the overview of SEO factors from there? Alrighty. So I did want to share this is a graphic from Moz, which is one of the SEO, I would say one of the authorities in the SEO space, that kind of outlines some of the main category factors or factor categories that a lot of us use in order to assess how well our site is doing, or what factors we can focus on in order to improve the rankability of a particular site. So I'm going to kind of go through each category, kind of explain a little bit about what it is and what you can find there, and then give a little bit more details on how we can take advantage of that to optimize for that particular category. So the first category is crawl accessibility. And in the beginning, I mentioned that the way that Google works is they send these little bots to crawl various sites. And these sites actually travel through links to go from site to site and page to page. So one of the most important aspects of SEO is to be sure that the bots can actually crawl your website. There are times where people might develop their sites not really understanding how the search engines actually work, and may have some type of directive on their website that stops bots from crawling, and then they kind of wonder, hey, like my website isn't indexing. It's like, well, you're not allowing Google to come onto your site and actually index your pages so that it can rank at a certain time. So there's also different errors that other errors that can also play a part into Google choosing not to index certain pages, based on what they found once they did crawl, even if they do have access to crawl. So it's always important to understand what kind of falls into that category and make sure you're in line with them. The good thing is there are a lot of CRM or not CRM, custom content management platforms that keep a lot of that stuff in mind for us. So you have things like, for e-commerce, that's Shopify, BigCommerce, Wix, and different sites like that. They kind of handle that part, right? Because they have their websites in a controlled environment where they're able to manage some of those directives and make sure that you're able to crawl. Google's able to crawl the site unless you specifically tell them not to, right? It more so comes into play when there are more custom sites, sometimes even like something like a WordPress site where you have a lot more control, or you're actually controlling your hosting environment, where sometimes crawl accessibility can be a bigger issue. Any questions on a crawl accessibility so far?
Ralph, sorry, so it sounds like if someone is using Squarespace or something like that, it should be optimized.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And there's a way, we use Squarespace at 51 Labs. So for example, I think you can disable it on the back end or enable it too. So that's something that would automatically be enabled unless you change it, right?
Unless you change it, right? Right, perfect. Awesome. So, so once we are certain that Google or any other search engine can crawl our website, we want to go ahead and actually give them something to crawl. And that's where the compelling content comes into play. And I'm going to actually group this with keyword optimized content as well, because again, if people aren't really searching for it, it's a little harder for them to find. So it's a strategy to create content that is compelling and that is that can answer a searcher's query. But in order to find out what people are asking or what a searcher's query is, we should keep keywords in mind. A great user experience is super important as well. Google is looking more into the performance of a particular site. They want to make sure that webmasters are keeping site speed in mind, and also the user experience, right? How quickly are you getting the information that you need? Are you trying to hide your information behind a wall in a sense, right? Sometimes people require an email to access information or phone number or something like that. If there's no way to exit out of that, or if you have to make that a requirement to view your content, Google can look at that as a bad factor. So they want a great user experience. They don't want to serve up sites that require too much of people to get the answers, because their main goal is to be that source for people to find answers quickly. And that kind of goes against what their goals are in terms of being that answer engine for all the other people. So for the users that visit their site. So we do have to keep that in mind. We do have to offer a great user experience. And there, again, a lot of different ways or things that we can think about when it comes to that. The next hierarchy comes with sharing share-worthy content, which comes to some of the aspects of earning those shout outs or earning links from other websites, or a ton of shares or from social media outlets and everything like that. Once Google sees that a particular piece or a particular website is getting a little more popular, they'll recognize it and they'll give that extra boost as well in order for them to keep up with the trends, right? So it's good to create content that's share worthy, good to create content that others are more likely to share. And then you can also implement some things to encourage them to share as well. And then you have your more so on-page type of things, which is your title, your URL, and your description, which I'll get more into in some later slides. And then snippets and schema markups help people stand out in SERPs. And what that is more so, I have a slide on that a little bit earlier, where it's like things like this, where things show up in the search engines, where particular answers might show up and whatnot. But that's because of the rich snippets and the schema markup that's added to the site, so that a user doesn't particularly have to click on your link to get an answer, but Google will give you some prime real estate, some good placement, so that people can be more familiar with your brand and know that you're an expert in that particular subject field or space. Okay, so any questions or clarifications that about any of the SEO factors that I went over just now? Alrighty.
You have one question, Ralph. Sorry,
Oh,
Kotaiba, go ahead. Feel free to unmute yourself, guys. Yeah.
Okay, hi. Actually, I don't have a question, but I want to point out something, and maybe you can correct me. That rich snippets, that Google by rich snippets sometimes like steal the traffic from the site, when you can get the whole answer from the setup page.
Yeah, yeah, it is something that we have to consider. But the thing is, they're gonna do it regardless. So, you know, they can either get the answer from someone else, or they can get the answer from us, right? So regardless, you know, we do try to, you know, capture those placements so that, you know, at least they can see our website name maybe, or understand that, okay, this is the company that gave me this answer for this particular question that or topic that I'm asking about. But yeah, we do lose traffic off of rich snippets, which is, you know, a game we have to play with Google sometimes. Any other questions there? Alrighty. So I wanted to kind of go through, again, some specific, I guess, action items or specific tips to help you with kind of monitoring some of the areas that that Google pays attention to as far as factors go. And also, again, just give you guys some actionable tips on what you could do pretty much right away to help optimize your site. And I think one of the first things is to make sure that, if you don't already, is to have Google Search Console verified for your website. And what Google Search Console is a tool that Google has to essentially tell you how they view your site, right? This is the part where we're talking about making sure that Google can crawl it correctly. And if they do, they're able to, they chose to index your website, and there are no errors that is stopping them from doing so. As you can see kind of in the image, there's like 268 errors for this particular website. So, you know, it's good to know where your errors are, and or because that's about maybe 268 links for this particular website that isn't getting indexed that probably should. You get what I mean? So, you know, it kind of takes them out of the game to where they're not even able to rank for a particular keyword that they might want to rank for, because there's something that Google doesn't like, or there's something that's blocking them from actually achieving that particular goal. So Search Console helps you get that particular view about how Google sees your site, and you just want to make sure that they're able to crawl everything, and that as many links as possible are valid and within their index, so that you can capitalize on their keywords. Google's not the only search engine that offers this type of tool either. Bing offers it as well, and other search engines have their own versions of this as well. Also within Search Console, one of the ways to make sure that, again, Google's seeing all the pages, is to submit what's called an XML sitemap. There are lots of sites. I would say the same thing where we have the hosted environments such as Squarespace and Wix and Shopify and things like that. They'll automatically have something that generates an XML sitemap for you. WordPress is a little different, where you might want to use a tool like Yoast SEO to generate that sitemap for you. But within Google Search Console, there's an area where all you have to do is essentially paste the link for the sitemap in there, and it gives Google like a shortcut for them to have a one-stop shop to crawl all of the pages on your site. So instead of kind of going through the web and, you know, traveling link to link and hoping to find your site somewhere, you're able to actually submit it, right? And say, here, Google, here's my site, here's all the pages on my site, and these are all the pages that I want you to index and rank for me. So it's super important to kind of shorten that timeline by just going directly to Google or going directly to other search engines, because other search engines have this feature as well, in order to submit this sitemap so they could understand a little bit more about your website, understand a little bit more about the structure and what you offer as far as information. Any questions there?
If I have a non-related question, then now or at the end of the session.
I'm kind of curious. So, I mean, go ahead. You can ask it.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about which are the best platforms for for e-commerce in terms of like SEO, automated settings for like experience with Magento 2, but I don't think that this is the best option for e-commerce to be SEO friendly.
Yeah, I think Magento has a couple like I guess architectural limitations, and so does Shopify. But I also think Google is a lot better at, I guess, deciphering through it, because you have these platforms, especially like something like a Shopify, where it's just become so popular that you either kind of accept it or you don't. I think though, for me, in my experience, I do like Shopify, although I do know there are some SEO limitations, but I just think the overall experience and the tools that are available in Shopify kind of outweigh that. And like I said, Google is a little bit more accepting nowadays as far as like the I guess common structure that Shopify has is a little bit more accepted nowadays. And they do offer a lot of apps and tools to help you meet these requirements in order to make sure your site is as optimized as possible. So I would say if I had a choice, my favorite choice is definitely Shopify. Yeah. But it also depends on your needs as a company too. There are e-commerce stores that grow to a level where maybe Shopify isn't the best, then you might need a more custom experience, and that's just a little different. But as far as a startup, definitely Shopify. Perfect. Any other questions on any of the Search Console or crawl error stuff? Cool. So one of the other tools or options out there or factors, I should say, was between creating compelling content and doing keyword research. I just wanted to kind of shout out a couple tools or a couple areas that you could look to that's free, that you're able to use to help you do a little bit more research and find out what's trending, find out what people are asking. Really, the first is Google Trends. Google Trends allows you to see the interest level and popularity of different terms, and allow you to compare, and also kind of find out what areas geographically these particular topics thrive in. It's a great tool, and again, allows you to just kind of get a little bit more insight on a particular keyword or topic. There's also Ubersuggest, which allows you to do some keyword research, limited keyword research for free. They do have a limit to how many times you can actually use the tool per day without a membership, but a good place to get some insights pretty quickly. And then there's one more that I like to use. It's called answerthepublic.com. And they allow you to essentially, they aggregate the search suggestions that you get when you start typing into Google. They start spitting out the search suggestions, and essentially that site just aggregates them into one place, so that, you know, once you type in a particular topic, it starts gathering all of the suggestions that might have shown up for that particular topic, depending on what you typed in after. So for example, if I typed in what is SEO, they'll type in, you know, when they'll type in like words like when to see what comes after, Y to see what comes after. They'll type in A to see what starts coming after B, and then it aggregates that list for you. So those are a couple tools that I like to use to help me do a little bit of research and topics that are essentially free. Some of the other ones that are a little bit more costly is SEMrush. I think it was one of the greatest SEO tools out there, along with Ahrefs. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, but I can definitely share a resource after, so you guys can take a look at those sites too. Any questions there? Alrighty. Again, this is just a image of another way where you can actually, you don't have to use the answer public. You can actually go into Google and just start typing in what you're about to search for, and then just kind of take a look at the keywords and see what's coming up. Another thing, when we're talking about creating optimized content based on your keywords, is there are certain places to make sure that your keyword appears to give the strongest signal, or to give the strongest message to Google in order to let them know what your particular site is about and what the keywords are that you want to rank for. We have the URL, which, as you can see, I would actually just like to ask a question. Given that you guys have these two URLs right here, which is the one that you think you would click on versus the other? Any takers?
They're all messaging in the chat, Ralph. Most of them are saying the first one. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing the chat because I'm presenting. I'm sorry, guys. I have that up now. Okay, yeah, the first one, right. And that's simply because it kind of looks a little less spammy, a little less shady. But yeah, so things like that, things like question marks, equal signs, a bunch of numbers are things that we want to avoid. We want the URL to be descriptive and keyword optimized, right? This one clearly is about a New York City guide, and it's probably the keyword that they want to go after. And Google also understands that and gives you a little ranking boost for that. Another place to make sure that your keywords are integrated into is your title tags and meta descriptions. And your title is, that first blue line that comes up. And your meta description is that actual description that kind of tells you what the page is about. We're able to control what that is and optimize that for Google, and it's an opportunity for us to use our keywords within that particular space. A couple guidelines for that: a title tag should be between 60 and 65 characters. If it's longer than that, it starts getting cut off by Google. And the meta description should be between 140 to 155 characters. Again, if it's any longer than that, it starts getting cut off by Google, and people can't see the full idea or thought that you were trying to get across. Both should include your main target keyword that you're trying to go for, so that users build that association once they see it and want to click on it more often. Another area is essentially your H1 tag, or your first heading of your page, should also incorporate at least a variation of your target keyword, as well as having a variation in your first paragraph very early on the page. Again, Google's looking at all these signals, and this is like one of the best ways to tell them, okay, here's what my page is about, and here's the keyword that I think matches that particular topic the most. And a lot of times you will see some type of ranking boost after implementing all of those. So any question for some of these keyword optimized optimization techniques?
Ralph, I know you mentioned you can change the headings, but it's probably not a good idea to do it super frequently, right? So it's kind of a tough balance to strike between like finding the right word and testing different ones, so you're not seeing so many changes like as a user on the website.
Yeah, I think I mean, homepages, I think generally, especially on e-commerce and stuff like that, change a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the more static pages, like you know, if the page is on page SEO, typically wouldn't change as often. And plus, we also want to give the search engine some time to react to the changes that we make. Seeing ranking changes and whatnot sometimes isn't as quick as we might think it is. So if we're changing it once per week, we're not even really giving it enough time to see if it's working. So yeah, we just want to make sure we have enough time to see, is this the best keyword? Is it actually making an impact? And then from there, you know, I always encourage testing, but let's just make sure that we do have, we give ourselves enough time to actually see if it's working.
Sure. Thanks.
Any other questions there? Cool.
Hamid, do you have a question? Oh no, he went off mute. Okay, never mind.
Alrighty. And the last thing I wanted to kind of talk about is a little bit of off-page SEO elements. We talked about Google encouraging and prioritizing sites that seem more popular, and the way that they kind of look at it is, you know, how many different blogs or forums are you appearing on? How many people are talking about you on social or sharing your content on social or your videos or whatever the case may be, or how many, you know, particular directories you're listed on, and how often and how much engagement they're actually getting. So it is a strategy for SEO to kind of go out and encourage that you share those content through, you know, things like what's called link building, or, you know, really just sharing the content that you're creating on multiple social platforms to kind of bring that traffic back. And again, Google's kind of paying attention to all that stuff. So off-page SEO is definitely important. So it's not only about what you do on your site, but it's also about what you do off of your site. And for those who are more local and doing a little bit of local SEO, you know, we want to always get that particular map pack, or we want somebody to type in, you know, whatever store near me, and we want to be one of the first ones to come up without an ad, of course. And one of the factors that really contributes to that is reviews. Obviously, creating your profile, right? Google My Business profile, but then encouraging reviews and positive reviews for that. Google weighs a lot, very heavily on that. And then also making sure that we appear on local directory listings like Yelp, Yahoo Local, Hot Frog, you know, just different types of listings that may have to do more so with your field as well, or a listing that has to do more so with your actual location. So whatever is a popular directory within your location or within the space that you're in, you want to make sure you're listed on that as well if you're able to capture that. And the biggest thing is to make sure your name, address, and phone number appears throughout your site and the listing, and that it's consistent. We talked about site performance a little bit as well. One of the biggest things there is just making sure that your images are not too large. A lot of times we want the highest quality images, the highest resolution, but we don't understand that you know, the better the quality, the larger the file is, which can take some additional time for it, which can make the page take some additional time for it to load. And Google's kind of paying attention to those particular signals, which can impact your page speed score and impact your rankings as well. So any questions on any of those particular factors, and also opening it up to questions overall as well.
One quick one for me is, where does that speed score show up?
Yes, so speed score shows up on what's called Google Insights. If you type it into Google, it'll be, yeah, you just type in Google Insights, it'll be the first results that comes up. And then you're able to plug in your URL that you want to check. And then from there, it'll spit out a score. I wouldn't pay too close of attention to like the actual number of the score versus what Google is saying is the reason why your score is what it is. And what I mean by that is Google, it's a diagnostic test, and Google is actually just checking boxes, right? And making sure that you meet particular requirements. So it's not saying that your page isn't fast if you have like a 14 page score. But what it's saying is you didn't check all the boxes when it came down to our diagnostic test. And then essentially what it does is it gives you suggestions on how to improve your speed and performance. So you take those suggestions and whatever you can implement, you know, you go ahead and implement it through your site. I would say this is an area where it's kind of a caveat to having a controlled and hosted environment like Squarespace or Wix. There's a lot of factors here that a lot of those people on those types of sites cannot control. So we have to find that happy medium. And that's why one of my recommendations is compressing the images, because that's typically 9 times out of 10 something that you can't control even on a controlled environment.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Ralph? Just see if anyone's raising their hands. I know, Ralph, there were certain questions that came through in the survey. So maybe we could touch on some of those. Like, for example, one of them is, will SEO cost me a lot? Will implementing it be expensive for someone's business?
So I think the amount of investment that's needed for SEO definitely does depend on the industry that you're in and what your competition is actually doing. I would say in comparison to ads, SEO is your lowest cost investment and the highest ROI as well. So in comparison to other channels, it's the least expensive. As far as how much it's going to cost you specifically, really depends on how aggressive you want to be and how aggressive you have to be to stand up to your particular competitors in your space. So I don't have a particular, I guess, dollar amount, but that's the best way I can answer that.
That's great. And if another one of the questions was, do you have any recommendations for tools? So I know you gave a few earlier, but if there are any like free tools or even paid tools people should look at when it comes to SEO, maybe if you can type them in, or if you let me know, I can type them into the chat.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can type them in. I know I mentioned SEMrush, Ahrefs are probably some of the top tools in the SEO industry right now. I like Page Optimizer Pro as well. These are more so like paid subscriptions, but what Page Optimizer Pro does is they essentially take a look at a particular keyword, look at your competitors, and kind of spit out additional information on what you need to incorporate on your page in order to help you rank better for it. So they'll have recommendations when it comes to, you know, word count, how long your content should be, which are keyword variations that you need to incorporate into your content. And then they have also what's called LSI keywords, which is keywords that are used for latent semantic indexing, which essentially are words that are typically associated with a particular topic. So if I'm talking about shopping or buying a car, some of the words that typically might show up with that is maybe Honda or maybe Mercedes or whatever the case may be, right? So they're looking at a kind of like yeah, all the keywords that are typically associated with a particular topic, and they'll add those suggestions to and give those to you as well.
Sounds great. We have a question. Mohammed just sent through a question privately to me. Mohammed, would you like to ask out loud if you're able? I don't know if he can unmute himself. Okay, maybe Ralph, I'll read you his question. So it was, do we need to optimize SEO on Google Search Console only, or is there another tool for other search engines that needs to be set up? And then the other question was, do you have recommendations for e-commerce SEO?
So typically, other search engines do have some type of webmaster tool. I know for sure Bing definitely has a webmaster tool as well to help you understand a little bit more about what they're seeing. I would say Google and Bing are the top two that I work with. So again, it's common between them. But I would just say research anything that is along the lines of webmaster tools or search console, and you should be able to see if that particular search engine has something along those lines as well. As far as recommendations for e-commerce SEO, e-commerce SEO is a little tough because a lot of the keywords that people would generally want to rank for are dominated either by, at least from where I'm at, they're dominated either by like the big boy websites like Amazon, Walmart, Best Buy, or they're dominated by people who are aggregating information or data to give people a lot of options as to what they could buy that are shouting out different brands. And obviously we don't want to shout out different brands. So what ends up happening is, or what we typically want to do is there's kind of two ways to tackle it. The first is to really go after more longer tail keywords, right? Try to find those nooks and crannies that in areas that are a little less competitive and are very specific to the products that we offer, so that we do have a better chance of ranking for those particular keywords. And then another thing is just doing a more upper level SEO strategy by doing, looking up or creating content, which is like blog content or more information-based content around the particular topic or area that you service or that your product is associated with. And that allows you to target your audience so that they can be exposed to your brand. You might even be able to collect emails from that point to funnel them into your funnel. That way you can remarket to them at a later date. But and then that's the way you kind of make the most out of SEO from that perspective. But yeah, those are my top two recommendations, I would say, for e-commerce.
We have one from Nabil in the chat. Do Google Ads help improve SEO other than the ad itself? Does it improve SEO after the ad has stopped running?
So I do think there is a slight association between Google Ads and organic listings. I can't say that for a fact, but I have noticed that, again, and it might be, again, some of the metrics that they're using, like user metrics that they're using to see that people are responding well to a particular page. But once you start sending traffic to a page and it starts performing well, typically organic isn't too far behind it. Again, not sure if that's something Google is doing intentionally or not, but I've seen that correlation. So I would say, yes, I think there's a correlation. And after the ad itself has stopped, it probably will take some time. But I do think, unless you're ranking like, top of page one and your user metrics are like super good, like people are actually interacting with it, I think over time, yeah, you're going to start to see a decline in organic traffic. Unless it's like a super relevant page. Does that answer the question, Oliver?
Oh, that's Nabi's question, so hopefully it does. Koteba agrees with you on the ads in the chat. Oh, that's great. One question that came through in the survey, and you started touching on it, was how long does it take to appear in a search engine usually?
Ah, man, I think it varies. But to appear in the search engine is actually, I think it's pretty quick. To see yourself start indexing, I think I've seen it between after you submit the sitemap, within anywhere between 1 to 3 weeks, depending on kind of like how much traffic you're sending to it. Like, but a lot of times I don't think it takes more than a month if you're really active. You'll see, like, if you type in a search like this, site:/site.com. If you type in something like this is another way to check into Google. That's a way to check to see if your site is appearing. That's a quick way to see if you're in their index. Now, as far as saying that you're ranking well for something, that's a different timeline, or that you're showing up first for even your branded name. That takes a little bit more time. I've seen that take months, 3 to 6 months, but appearing in their index, their actual index, and then storing your information is actually pretty quick.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions, either in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute, or comments even?
I want to ask about something. Like, I noticed, I don't know if I'm wrong or right, but I noticed that Google care a lot about the performance of the website. Like, for example, I'm working in an e-commerce company which uses the progressive web app, and although the situation was like completely catastrophe, like there were about 40% of the links 404.
Wow.
And yeah, and we were getting good ranks. Like, for example, just optimizing the metadata, we ranked for a long tail query for PlayStation before Sony.
Wow, that's
But in Iraq, like by PlayStation Online in Iraq, like a long tail query which is localized. So I do think that Google care a lot about the performance or the technology, like the PWA or the AMP.
Yeah, I agree. They do, and they're putting more emphasis on it too. I can share a resource too that is that states they are making, like some of the core web vitals a core ranking factor now. So they're looking a lot more into the performance area of things. They're kind of deprioritizing like things like link building a lot more, and keyword. I wouldn't say keyword usage, but I guess the density of the usage. So yeah, performance is definitely becoming a bigger ranking factor.
I want also to ask about something about the situation of SEO, like in Iraq especially. I don't know if you are in Iraq or well informed about the situation, but I think that most of the traffic to the website comes from like Facebook groups or word of mouth rather than Google. Pretty like less people search or like think or of searching in Google for their what they want. They simply ask their neighbors or like a Facebook group. So is the situation like this? Because I'm not originally from here, so I don't know if I'm fully understand the situation. Yeah, also the yeah, I forgot other question.
It's okay. I can say I am not familiar with the Iraq market. As as much or really at all. I'm here in the US right now. So I can speak more so on the US market a little bit. So I'm not sure if, I mean, I see a transition here to where word of mouth is a pretty big, or it's always kind of been pretty big, but people still search quite often as well. So I'm not sure right there.
Yeah, Kutaiba, if I can jump in, maybe. I think you're right. We see that most of the e-commerce and whatnot is happening via Facebook. I know there are a number of entrepreneurs here with tech businesses and e-commerce businesses. So if any of you guys want to jump in with your thoughts, feel free. But I think a lot of the traffic is generated from social media. So like our 51 Labs website, most of the content is from outside of Iraq, but most of the clicks on the social pages are from within Iraq. So we kind of, the website is there. It's not really used by Iraqis necessarily. So yeah. I think, oh, Zahra, go ahead. You're not on. Okay, sorry, Zahra. Maybe we'll take Ralph Hamid's question as the last one. It's in the chat there. Does SEO need one-time setup and make dynamic sitemap for your site, or it needs from time to time some optimization?
So I think SEO altogether is an ongoing thing. It needs some type of maintenance to continue pushing forward, like constantly creating new content. And as you, like, let's say you're e-commerce or a service-based business, if you're adding new services or products, you know, you want to make sure you're optimizing those pages as you expand your website. So SEO itself is ongoing. As far as the sitemap specifically, the way these tools work, or how the sitemaps are generated, you don't constantly have to recreate the sitemap. I would say check on it every now and then to see if there's anything that's appearing that you don't want to appear on it. But other than that, they'll automatically generate the sitemaps, and once you submit it, it's kind of a set and forget type thing, unless again there's something that you don't want on there that shouldn't be on there that you need to kind of take off or remove.
Hamid, does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Of course.
Ralph, we're at the end of the hour. I feel like there are a lot of questions, but I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this for us and so early in the morning. So thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining. This was a really dynamic session, and we're going to post the recording on our YouTube page. I know some of you guys weren't able to see the whole thing, but Ralph, that was super useful. And I think you gave everyone some great tools and it was really practical. So thank you so much. If everyone could join me in thanking Ralph, that would be great.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Ralph.
Thanks, Ralph. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you guys at our next webinar. And if you have suggestions for topics, we'll send a survey after this, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So thanks for joining us, and Ralph, thank you again.
Of course, thank you so much. And I would say I am open to having more discussion if you guys, you know, would like to ask more questions. So I'll share my information with Patricia, and she can kind of send it all to you guys as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
For me, I have many suggestions. I will send them later.
No problem, Hamid. Okay, thanks, guys. Nice to see you.
Alrighty, guys.
Bye.
Have a good